This tiny coin in your pocket could be worth thousands, and most people don't even know it exists. Only a few of these rare coins were ever made, and if you have one, you're holding a fortune. What looks like an ordinary penny could actually change your life forever. Step into the world of American coinage, where every coin carries a story of history, politics, economy, and artistry. And today, we journey deep into the year 1988 to uncover the full history of the Jefferson nickel, a coin that has been in the pockets, purses, and cash registers of millions of Americans for decades, and yet holds stories that go far beyond its simple 5-cent face value. The Jefferson nickel, first introduced in 1938, was a replacement for the Buffalo nickel, a design that had served the nation since 1913. The Buffalo nickel, though beloved, had worn poorly in circulation and was notoriously difficult to strike cleanly at the United States Mint. So when the Treasury announced a design change, the new coin would honor Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, author of the Declaration of Independence, and one of the most influential figures in American history. The chosen design was created by Felix Schlag, a German-born American sculptor who won the public design competition. His portrait of Jefferson on the obverse and the image of Monticello Jefferson's Virginia estate on the reverse became iconic symbols of the nickel, and these motifs endured with only subtle changes for decades. When we fast forward 50 years from the original issue, we arrive at 1988, a year marked by significant historical events both in the United States and abroad. President Ronald Reagan was serving the final year of his second term. The Cold War was inching closer to its end, with relations improving between the United States and the Soviet Union. Technology was advancing rapidly, and American culture was shifting towards the closing decade of the 20th century. In the midst of these broader historical shifts, the Jefferson nickel of 1988 continued to circulate as a cornerstone of American commerce, struck at multiple U.S. mint facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The 1988 Jefferson nickels were produced in the hundreds of millions, making them a common coin, but not without nuances that collectors and historians must pay attention to. Philadelphia coins bore no mint mark at the time. Denver coins carried the D mint mark, and San Francisco produced proof versions with the S mint mark, intended for collectors rather than circulation. The composition of the 1988 Jefferson nickel was the same as it had been since the conclusion of World War II, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded in a copper-nickel alloy. This composition gave the coin its familiar silvery color, but also ensured durability, as nickels are some of the hardest working coins in circulation, enduring decades of use without significant wear. The diameter of the coin was 21.21 millimeters, its thickness 1.95 millimeters, and its weight 5 grams. These standard measurements had been carefully calibrated to ensure compatibility with vending machines and coin-operated devices across the country. Beyond its physical attributes, the design of the 1988 Jefferson nickel carries a depth of meaning that connects us to the vision of the nation. Jefferson's profile facing left shows a calm yet determined expression, symbolizing enlightenment, rationality, and leadership. His inscription reads, "In God We Trust," along with the word liberty and the date 1988. And when collectors examine these coins carefully, they often focus on strike quality, steps of Monticello, clarity of Jefferson's hair, and wear patterns on the cheek and jawline. On the reverse, Monticello remains the central feature. The neoclassical design of Jefferson's home symbolizes stability, democracy, and Jefferson's deep connection to architecture and Enlightenment ideals. The inscriptions include E pluribus unum Monticello, 5 cents, and United States of America. Many collectors seek nickels that show full steps on Monticello, as these details can be weakly struck, and finding a fully detailed Monticello from 1988 in pristine condition adds value far beyond the standard 5-cent face worth. In terms of production numbers, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 700 million nickels in 1988. The Denver Mint produced a similar figure, while the San Francisco Mint created proof issues numbering in the millions. but of a much higher quality, struck multiple times on polished planchets with mirrored fields and frosted devices. These proof nickels stand out as some of the most beautiful examples of the coinage of the era. While the coin itself was common, its place in the broader economic landscape of 1988 cannot be ignored. This was a year when inflation rates were relatively low, unemployment had improved compared to the early 1980s recession, and the U.S. dollar was a dominant global currency. The nickel in circulation represented everyday commerce, from purchasing a soda at a vending machine to making change in grocery stores, and its continued circulation showed the resilience of the coinage system. Collectors of Jefferson nickels often seek out the 1988 issues not for rarity, but for condition, with high-grade examples certified by grading services such as PCGs and NGC commanding premium prices, particularly those with the full steps designation on the reverse. Full steps indicate that Monticello is sharply struck, and all the horizontal steps are visible without interruption. Such coins are scarce relative to the total mintage and can sell for significant sums compared to ordinary circulation strikes. Beyond grading and values, the 1988 nickel connects us to broader themes of numismatic history. It reflects the durability of Felix Schlag's design, which by then had been in use for half a century. Also shows how American coinage of the late 20th century balanced tradition with practicality. While radical design changes were being made to the nickel in this period, yet the coin still embodied national ideals, stability, and continuity. It is important to note that 1988 was only a few years away from the major redesigns of U.S. coinage that would arrive in the 1990s and 2000s. The Jefferson nickel itself would undergo significant changes in the early 2000s with the Westward Journey series, and eventually a new obverse portrait. But in 1988, the classic Schlag design was still going strong, symbolizing an era of American confidence. As numismatists studied these coins, they considered die varieties, mint errors, and strike anomalies as potential rarities. Off-center strikes, double dies, clipped planchets, and other minting mistakes from 1988 Jefferson nickels can transform an ordinary 5-cent piece into a collector's prize with values far exceeding face value. And when we place the 1988 Jefferson nickel into the larger story of American coinage, we see it as part of the flow of history linking the economic realities of the 1980s with the enduring symbolism of Jefferson himself. From Monticello to Washington, D.C., from the founding era to the closing decade of the 20th century, this small coin carried immense symbolic weight. The Jefferson nickel of 1988 is more than just a 5-cent piece. It is a reminder of Jefferson's ideals of liberty and democracy. It is a tangible artifact of the Reagan-era economy. It is a link in the chain of American numismatics stretching back centuries and forward into the present day. Collectors, historians, and everyday Americans who held these coins in their hands were participating in a story far larger than they might have realized. And today, as we look back, we can see how even a common coin can reveal extraordinary layers of history, artistry, and meaning. In the world of American coinage, there are certain years and certain issues that stand as markers of history, and the Jefferson nickel of 1959 is one such piece. This coin does not immediately scream rarity or glamour, yet when you peel back its layers you find a story of change, continuity, artistry, politics, and economics wrapped together in a small 5-cent piece that has passed through the hands of millions. The 1959 Jefferson nickel is more than just a coin. It is a gateway into the American post-war era, a time of optimism, prosperity, and shifting identities. And in this story, we will take you on a long, detailed journey from the origins of the Jefferson nickel itself to the specific place 1959 holds in the numismatic and cultural record. The Jefferson nickel had been introduced in 1938, replacing the long-running Buffalo nickel, which while beautiful had been plagued with problems of striking detail and rapid die. Where the new design, featuring the profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his Virginia home Monticello on the reverse, was created by Felix Schlag, a German-born sculptor who had won the design competition. Schlag's design was chosen in part for its clarity, simplicity, and historical reverence. Jefferson was a revered figure in American culture. His role as author of the Declaration of Independence, third President of the United States, an advocate for democracy and learning made him a symbol perfectly suited for the face of a circulating coin. 1959, the Jefferson nickel had already been circulating for over 2 decades. It had become one of the most familiar coins in the pockets of Americans, from school children saving pennies and nickels in piggy banks to soldiers returning from overseas, to families buying groceries in post-war suburbia. In 1959, America was at the height of the Eisenhower years. The nation was enjoying a period of great economic expansion. Highways, suburban homes, automobiles, and consumer goods defined the decade, and the Jefferson nickel served as the steady workhorse of daily commerce in this landscape. 1959 nickel was struck in 2 primary facilities, the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint. Together, they produced hundreds of millions of these coins, ensuring that they were ubiquitous in circulation. Yet within this mass production, there are countless stories and subtleties. Every die used in minting these coins bears slight differences, creating minor varieties for collectors to study over time. From die cracks and repunched mint marks to the quality of strike on Monticello's steps, these variations became the seeds of numismatic fascination. What might appear as just another common coin to one person could be a treasured find to another. The year 1959 was also notable for being right in the middle of America's transition from an era of silver coinage to the modern base metal era. While the nickel had always been composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, unlike the silver, dimes, quarters, and half dollars, its role in commerce became even more important as inflation slowly ate at the value of money. In the late 1950s, a nickel could still buy a bottle of soda or a candy bar, and it played a vital role in vending machines that were beginning to dot bus stations, diners, and workplaces across the country. Collectors often view 1959 nickels through several lenses. One is the condition census, since most of these coins were spent and worn down. Finding high-grade examples with full steps on Monticello is a real challenge. Full steps indicate that the strike was strong enough to show every detail of Jefferson's home on the reverse, and coins with this feature can command significant premiums. The difference between a common circulated 1959 nickel worth only face value and a gem uncirculated example with full steps worth hundreds is dramatic. This tells us something fundamental about coin collecting. The stories are not just about age, but about preservation, detail, and rarity within abundance. Beyond the numismatic details, the 1959 Jefferson nickel offers us a chance to reflect on the broader culture. Coins are artifacts of their time. They carry with them the politics, art, and national identity of the era. Jefferson's image on the nickel in 1959 spoke to a nation that valued continuity with its founding ideals while racing toward modernity. Jefferson, the philosopher, president, the architect of liberty, was a safe, reassuring figure for a Cold War America trying to project stability in the face of global tensions. It is also important to consider the artistry itself. Schlag's design had undergone slight modifications over the years, but the essence remained unchanged. Jefferson's stern yet calm profile, the domed neoclassical Monticello with its steps, columns, and symmetry, all captured in miniature, were a reminder that coins are more than money. They are small sculptures mass-produced for the public to carry like tokens of identity. Production process of these coins in 1959 further highlights the industrial marvel of the United States Mint. Blank planchets were fed into presses with dies striking them at tremendous force. The mint had to produce millions of perfect nickels to meet demand. Each coin was the result of a technological system refined over decades to ensure speed, efficiency, and accuracy. Yet, in the midst of this efficiency, imperfections always crept in, and those imperfections, the doubled die, the overpolished steps, the misplaced mint mark, these are the quirks that collectors cherish and that keep the study of 1959 nickels alive. When you hold a 1959 Jefferson nickel, you are holding a piece of this story. You are holding the product of a nation in its golden post-war moment. You are holding the artistry of Felix Schlag. You are holding the industrial might of the U.S. Mint. You are holding the ideals of Thomas Jefferson condensed into metal and circulated through every corner of American life. And You are holding the beginning of the modern era of coin collecting, which by the late 1950s was exploding in popularity, with clubs, publications, and collectors young and old searching through pocket chan gesso. As we take this long journey through the Jefferson nickel of 1959, we will dive deep into its origins, its production, its varieties, its cultural context, its role in commerce, and its enduring place in numismatic study. This is not just the story of a coin, it is the story of a people, a time, and a nation seen through the lens of a small copper nickel disc that has outlasted generations and continues to intrigue us today. In the vast world of American coinage, few pieces capture the intersection of historical context, monetary policy, and national identity as profoundly as the Jefferson nickel. And among these, the 1967 Jefferson nickel holds a special place for collectors, historians, and everyday enthusiasts who seek to understand not only the coin itself, but the era in which it was struck. To truly grasp the importance of the 1967 nickel, one must first travel back to the origins of the Jefferson nickel series, which began in 1938 when the United States Mint decided to replace the Buffalo nickel. After a long run, the choice to honor Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, was deliberate, as Jefferson symbolized the nation's democratic ideals, westward expansion, and intellectual legacy. The obverse was designed by Felix Schlag, whose portrait of Jefferson became one of the most recognizable images on American coinage for decades. The reverse displayed Jefferson's Monticello, his iconic Virginia home, carefully engraved as a reminder of his architectural genius and personal dedication to Republican values. Fast forward to the 1960s, a turbulent decade of American history marked by the Cold War, civil rights movements, technological advancements, and shifting economic landscapes. Within this dynamic environment, coinage became not only a medium of exchange, but also a reflection of national priorities. During the early 1960s, the United States Mint faced a growing crisis in the supply of silver. Rising silver prices had caused hoarding of dimes, quarters, and half dollars, leading to widespread coin shortages across the nation. The government was forced to act swiftly by reducing the silver content in circulating coins and by implementing changes in minting practices. This environment directly impacted the production of the 1967 Jefferson nickel. The year 1967 fell right in the middle of what numismatists refer to as the coinage crisis years. From 1965 to 1967, the US Mint suspended the use of mint marks on coins in order to discourage collectors from removing too many coins from circulation. Prior to this period, mint marks such as D for Denver and S for San Francisco were prominently placed on coins and became targets for collectors who would set aside massive quantities, hoping to profit from rarity. The Treasury believed that eliminating mint marks would ease shortages by ensuring coins remained in circulation. As a result, the 1967 Jefferson nickel bears no mint mark, regardless of whether it was produced in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. This policy makes the 1967 issue especially distinctive within the Jefferson nickel series. Another crucial aspect of the 1967 nickel lies in its composition. Unlike dimes, quarters, and half dollars, the 5-cent piece had already shifted away from silver many decades earlier. Since its introduction, the Jefferson nickel was minted in a copper-nickel alloy consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This made it immune to the silver shortage crisis, but the lack of mint marks and the experimental minting practices of the mid-1960s gave the coin its unique place in history. More than 107 million nickels were struck in 1967, meaning that while the coin is not rare in sheer numbers, the historical circumstances surrounding its production add layers of interest for collectors and students of monetary history. When examining the 1967 Jefferson nickel, one also consider the artistry and symbolism that continued to play a role even during times of change. Schlag's portrait of Jefferson, though modified slightly over the years, remained a dignified representation of a leader who embodied Enlightenment ideals. The reverse with Monticello serves as a reminder of Jefferson's contributions, not just as a statesman, but as an architect, inventor, and thinker in 1967, these images resonated deeply with Americans navigating a time of social unrest and transformation. The coin circulated widely in an economy adapting to new policies, the space race, and changing international relations. Each nickel passing through hands was both a tool of commerce and a quiet reminder of Jefferson's enduring presence in American identity beyond its general circulation. The 1967 Jefferson nickel also participated in special minting programs of the time. The mint issued special mint sets rather than traditional proof sets from 1965 through 1967. These sets included higher quality strikes of coins with smoother surfaces and sharper details. Although not true proofs, they were intended for collectors during the suspension of regular proof production. The 1967 Jefferson nickel from these special mint sets is particularly sought after because of its superior strike and finish compared to the average circulation piece. From a collector's perspective, the value of the 1967 nickel varies widely based on condition. While most circulated examples remain worth only face value, uncirculated specimens and special mint set coins can command premiums. Coins that exhibit strong strikes, full steps on Monticello, and pristine surfaces are especially prized by numismatists and grading agencies. These small details make the difference between a common coin worth only 5 cents and a collectible specimen valued much higher. To place the 1967 Jefferson nickel into broader context, one must also reflect on what coins represent in American society. They are not merely metal discs used for trade, they are miniature historical documents carrying the marks of national policies, economic decisions, and cultural identity. The suspension of mint marks in the 1960s represented an attempt by the government to solve a practical problem, yet it also inadvertently created a subset of coins that tell a story of scarcity, public trust, and the relationship between citizens and their currency. The 1967 nickel thus becomes a lens through which one can study not only numismatics, but also economics, sociology, and politics. In conclusion, the 1967 Jefferson nickel stands as more than just a 5-cent piece. It embodies the history of a decade filled with change, the practical responses of a government facing monetary challenges, and the ongoing legacy of Thomas Jefferson, whose image and home remain central to the nation's coinage. For over half a century, for collectors it is a coin that connects them to the broader story of American history, and for historians, it is a tangible reminder of how small details in everyday life, such as a mint mark or an alloy, can reveal larger truths about an era. The 1967 Jefferson nickel, therefore, deserves its place in the narrative of United States coinage, not simply as another circulating coin, but as a symbol of adaptation, continuity, and national identity preserved in metal. In the world of American coinage, few series have carried as much historical weight, cultural symbolism, and enduring presence in the hands of everyday people as the Jefferson nickel. And when we focus our attention on the 1971 Jefferson nickel, we open the door not only to a coin minted in the millions, but to an era of American history, a reflection of political, social, and economic changes, and the continuation of one of the most iconic designs ever to grace United States coinage. The Jefferson nickel was first introduced in 1938, replacing the long-running Buffalo nickel, and chosen through a public design competition. Featured on its obverse the portrait of Thomas Jefferson, America's third president, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, and an enduring figure of American democracy, and on the reverse his architectural masterpiece, Monticello, the plantation home he designed and built in Virginia. The coin was sculpted by Felix Schlag, whose work, though modified for practicality, became a lasting tribute to both Jefferson and classical architecture, and for more than 3 decades. By the time 1971, the design had already become one of the most familiar faces of American currency. The year 1971 itself was a turning point in American history. It was the year when the United States officially ended the direct convertibility of the dollar into gold, closing the chapter on the Bretton Woods system and ushering in the era of fiat currency. It was on Also a year of cultural upheaval as the Vietnam War raged on. Social movements pressed forward with demands for civil rights, equality, and environmental reform, and the economy showed signs of stress, with inflation beginning to mount. In this backdrop, the U.S. Mint continued its steady production of coins to meet the nation's demands for commerce. Among those coins, the 1971 Jefferson nickel was struck in vast numbers at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, with proof issues coming from San Francisco. The Philadelphia Mint in 1971 produced over 316 million nickels, while the Denver Mint struck more than 315 million, creating a combined circulation mintage that exceeded 630 million coins, an extraordinary figure that speaks to the heavy use of the nickel denomination in everyday American life. The San Francisco Mint, meanwhile, issued proof coins specially made for collectors, with mirror-like finishes and crisp details, intended not for circulation, but for numismatic appreciation. In terms of composition, the 1971 Jefferson nickel continued the post-war tradition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a durable alloy that gave the coin its distinctive silver-gray appearance and resistance to wear, unlike the wartime nickels of 1942 to 1945, which contained silver. These coins were part of the standard non-precious metal issues. Looking at the design itself, the obverse portrait of Jefferson by 1971 had already been in use for more than 3 decades, and while some critics considered it outdated, others praised its simplicity and familiarity. Jefferson faces left with the inscriptions "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date 1971 arranged around his bust. The reverse displays Monticello with the words E pluribus unum, Monticello 5 cents, and United States of America. This design, while criticized at times for being flat or lacking artistic dynamism, had nonetheless achieved a kind of timeless status by 1971, deeply ingrained in the American consciousness, because every schoolchild, worker, shopper, and commuter saw it in daily transactions. When considering the historical significance of the 1971 nickel, it is important to note that it belongs to an era before the major design changes that would come later. In the series, collectors often divide Jefferson nickels into pre-2004 and post-2004 categories, since the Westward Journey series introduced new portraits and reverses in honor of the Lewis and Clark expedition, but in 1971, the design remained unaltered from the Schlag original aside from some modifications to lettering and details over the years. For numismatists, the 1971 Jefferson nickel holds a variety of points of interest. While it is common in circulated grades, due to its immense mintage, there are high-grade examples with sharp strikes and full steps on Monticello that carry premium value. The full steps designation refers to the visibility of the steps on the building's front when they are fully struck without interruption by weak striking or die, where a Jefferson nickel with 5 or 6 full steps, especially from 1971, can be quite rare and commands significant collector interest. The Philadelphia and Denver issues each present challenges to collectors seeking these high-quality strikes, since both mints were notorious during this period for producing coins with weaker details and heavy die use, thus making sharply struck full-step nickels from 1971 highly desirably. Proof coins from San Francisco are a different matter. These coins, struck multiple times on specially prepared planchets with polished dies, display much sharper details and mirror-like fields. Collectors often seek them for their beauty and for completing proof sets from the era. The 1971 proof nickel does not have a silver composition, unlike the proof quarters or half dollars of earlier years, but it does remain an affordable entry point for collectors of modern proofs. Yet there are rare instances of cameo and deep cameo examples where the frosted devices contrast dramatically with the mirrored fields. These carry additional premiums in the collector market. Another layer of interest comes from the historical events of 1971 that indirectly shaped the context in which these nickels circulated. As inflation began to erode the purchasing power of the dollar, coins like the nickel became increasingly important for small transactions, vending machines, parking meters, and everyday commerce. It is worth remembering that in 1971 5 cents still held considerably more buying power than it does today, allowing for the purchase of candy gum newspapers, and even contributing meaningfully to bus fares and phone calls. The nickel was not simply a small piece of change, it was a workhorse coin essential to daily life across the United States. Errors and varieties of the 1971 Jefferson nickel also intrigue specialists. Examples include off-center strikes, die cracks, clipped planchets, and double dies. Though not as dramatic as some error coins from other years, these anomalies can transform a common coin into a prize collectible, commanding prices many times higher than face value. The hunt for such varieties adds to the allure of the 1971 nickel and keeps collectors examining even ordinary pocket change in search of hidden treasures. The Jefferson nickel series as a whole has long been a favorite among collectors because it is both accessible and challenging. Accessible in the sense that millions were minted and circulated widely, making it possible for beginners to start collections from pocket change, and challenging because high-grade full-step examples from many dates, especially the 1950s and 1972, are elusive and expensive. The 1971 issue fits into this narrative perfectly, abundant in lower grades yet rare in pristine condition. As the decades have passed, the 1971 Jefferson nickel remains a symbol of its time, a coin that bridges the gap between the optimism of post-war America and the challenges of the turbulent 1972. It stands as a reminder of Jefferson's enduring legacy as a statesman, philosopher, and architect, and as a reflection of the mint's commitment to producing practical, durable coins for a growing nation. Today, while most 1971 nickels still trade for only face value in circulated condition, the finest examples, whether proofs with deep cameo contrasts or business strikes with sharp full steps, tell a deeper story about craftsmanship, history, and the collector's pursuit of perfection. So, when you hold a 1971 Jefferson nickel in your hand, you are not simply holding a piece of metal worth 5 cents, you are holding a window into American history, the continuation of a design legacy that began in 1938, the symbol of Jefferson's contributions to liberty and democracy, the reflection of a nation in transition during the early 1970s, and a coin that has traveled through countless hands, from shopkeepers to children saving for candy, to bus riders feeding change into a fare box. And that is what makes the 1971 Jefferson nickel so much more than just a coin. It is a piece of the American story preserved in copper and nickel, waiting for collectors, historians, and everyday people to rediscover its value. Imagine you are holding in your hand a coin that millions of people have spent without a second thought, a simple 5-cent piece struck in 2014 with the portrait of Thomas Jefferson on its obverse, a coin that circulates through gas stations, grocery stores, vending machines, and pockets across America. But hidden within this seemingly ordinary nickel lies a story that stretches across centuries of American history. A story that connects the founding ideals of the United States with the industrial power of the modern minting process, a story that ties together Jefferson's vision of liberty with the evolution of America's coinage system, and a story that collectors, historians, and numismatists find endlessly fascinating, because every single detail, from the metal composition to the mint marks to the subtle design changes, tells us something about who we are as a nation, and how far we have come. When we begin to study the Jefferson nickel of 2014, we are not just looking at another common coin. We are diving deep into one of the most enduring series in American numismatics. A coin that first appeared in 1938 and has gone through war years, design transformations, metal shortages, and artistic shifts, yet has never left circulation. This series has survived world conflicts, economic struggles, political changes, and technological revolutions, making it not just a means of commerce, but a living artifact of American identity. And the 2014 issue stands at a fascinating crossroads in this history because it reflects the modern minting standards while still carrying the legacy of the classic Jefferson design that began nearly 8 decades earlier. To truly appreciate the 2014 Jefferson nickel, we must begin with Thomas Jefferson. Himself, the third President of the United States, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, a man of immense intellect, vision, and contradictions, his inclusion on the 5-cent piece was not accidental for Jefferson's role in shaping the early republic, particularly his support for expanding the economy and his association with the Louisiana Purchase made him a fitting figure to grace American coinage. The nickel that bears his face has always been more than currency. It has been a tribute to the ideals of liberty, expansion, and democratic governance that Jefferson represented, even if history has also remembered him as a man of complexities who lived with contradictions between his words and his actions. The 2014 Jefferson nickel continues the design introduced in 2006, when the mint unveiled the forward-facing portrait created by artist Jamie Franke as part of the Westward Journey nickel series transition, unlike the earlier left-facing bust of Jefferson used since 1938. The new image presents a more lifelike portrait, showing Jefferson looking directly at the viewer with the word liberty inscribed in his own handwriting, a powerful reminder that the man whose vision helped establish America continues to look into our future. This design shift symbolized a more personal and direct connection between Jefferson and the people who use the coin in everyday life. Turning to the reverse, the 2014 nickel retains the classic image of Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, designed by Felix Schlag, who won the original 1938 design competition. This neoclassical building is not only a representation of Jefferson's architectural genius, but also a symbol of his Enlightenment ideals. It has been carefully rendered in great detail, and even in 2014, the mint's precision allows us to see the sharp columns and dome that stand as a testament to Jefferson's legacy in both politics and design. But the story of the 2014 Jefferson nickel is not only about the man or the design, it is also about the minting process, the history of coinage in the 21st century, and the role of the United States Mint in producing billions of coins for commerce. That year, the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mint struck Jefferson nickels in vast numbers, each mint leaving its distinct mark with the PD or S below the date. For collectors, these mint marks are not mere letters, they are clues to origin, history, and sometimes rarity. The San Francisco nickels of 2014 were struck in proof quality with mirrored fields and frosted devices, a stark contrast to the ordinary business strikes of Philadelphia and Denver that pass through millions of hands. Understanding the 2014 nickel also requires a journey into metallurgy, since the coin is composed of a copper-nickel alloy, a blend of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This combination gives the coin its distinctive color, durability, and resistance to wear, but it also reflects the economic decisions of the government, because metal prices fluctuate and the mint must constantly balance cost with practicality. Over the years, proposals have surfaced to change the composition of the nickel to cheaper alternatives, but in 2014, the traditional copper nickel alloy remained unchanged, thus continuing a long legacy that stretched back to the mid-20th century. Now step back and ask, why does the 2014 Jefferson nickel matter? After all, billions of nickels circulate every year, and most are spent without notice. The answer lies in context, for every coin tells a story about the time in which it was made. The 2014 nickel came at a moment when America was deep into the 21st century, dealing with global challenges, economic recovery after the financial crisis, and rapid technological transformation. Yet the coin struck that year still carried the face of a man born in 1743, still carried his vision of liberty, still carried the image of Monticello that had been designed nearly 80 years earlier. This continuity ties us to our past, while grounding us in the present. For collectors, the 2014 Jefferson nickel offers a variety of paths. Some seek out uncirculated examples with sharp details and luster, others pursue proof strikes with their mirrored brilliance. Some search for errors and varieties, such as double dies, off-center strikes, or other minting mishaps that make a common coin suddenly rare and valuable. These details can elevate a nickel worth 5 cents in commerce to one worth hundreds of dollars in a numismatic auction, making every pocket change discovery a potential treasure. Hunt's 2014 Jefferson nickel therefore stands at the intersection of history, art, economics, and collecting. It is a coin that embodies the ideals of Thomas Jefferson, the artistry of the United States Mint, and the ongoing fascination of numismatics. When we examine it closely, we see not just a piece of metal, but a living history book that continues to circulate in our pockets, connecting us to the story of America from the Revolutionary era through the 21st century. And when we tell this story in full detail, we can fill hours, because every aspect from Jefferson's political philosophy to the minting technology to the collecting market adds a new chapter to this endless tale of how a small coin can hold the weight of a nation's history.